Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first official episode of the Technically Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Megan, and here we have my co host, John, and a special guest, Austin. Welcome to Technically Speaking. Could you just give our audience a brief overview of your history and what you do, and a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely, Megan. So I'll start with, I guess, my history. So my career started off in the Army, was a logistics officer, spent some time in some fun places, got stationed in Hawaii. My wife was in the military as well. And so we were stationed in Colorado Springs. So had some beautiful places that we got to live. Came back to Ohio, which I might say is even more beautiful. Having left and come back, you really appreciate things that you didn't the first time around when I was growing up in Ohio. Came back to Ohio. I was working as logistics manager for a nonprofit called Community Bible Study, which is a great organization. When I got out of the Army, I was doing that while I got my MBA with a focus on operations management. And then once my wife got out of the military, we kind of decided that we wanted to find something, in the Ohio area, which she was a company executive officer for a recruiting office. And so we were like, all right, we want to stick around in Ohio. We've got kids now, our family's here. And I ended up getting a job with Goodyear. So worked at Goodyear for a few years, ended up as the airline operations manager there. And then I transitioned from that over to Veryable. Started off as the general manager of our Cleveland market, and now I'm the vice president of operations for Ohio with Veryable. So that's kind of just a brief history of my background from when I got out of school until where we are today.
I've got to ask about the Hawaii duty station. What did you get to do down there in the Army?
So it's funny. The Army has this way of putting its bases in, I don't want to say the worst places on the island, but it's right in the middle. So,
Okay.
The Navy's got a beautiful base.
Yeah.
Marine Corps
Marines are right there.
Base. Schofield Barracks is a beautiful base, but by comparison, it's right in the middle of the island. So there's some really good red dirt there. If you've ever been out to Hawaii, you've heard of the Red Dirt Shirt Company. I think they might have named it that after looking at Army uniforms coming out of the field. But yeah, no, it was a great experience.
Okay. I loved it. I was in the Navy, and I think, I got to go to Hawaii quite a bit, but I will agree, the Navy bases are often nice. You're near the water, so you're not too far from, Waikiki, obviously Pearl Harbor. So I feel bad. Did you at least get off the base for a little bit while you were down there, or did you guys get stuck? Okay.
No, plenty of time off the base, got to enjoy it. I think one of my favorite golf courses probably that I've ever played on is on the Marine Corps base, Kaneohe Bay.
Yes.
I forget the exact hole number, because it's been a few years since I played there. But, you come around and there's just this course, this hole right along the ocean. There's like a cliff there, and it is just breathtaking views. And I think I shanked into the water almost every time. Not intentionally. I'm just not that good.
Well, you should do it intentionally. Just leave one for the fishes,
So thank you for sharing a little bit about your background. If you don't mind me kind of circling back, could you just talk a little bit about Veryable, which is where you work currently, and what led you there? Just a little bit about whatever you would like to talk about.
Absolutely. So Veryable is a tech company. And Veryable was founded based on the principle and the idea that we want to help revitalize American manufacturing. One of the key functional constraints in manufacturing and distribution, light industrial, is labor. And so Veryable really tries to help solve that problem, operationalize labor, create a marketplace where people are able to work in a flexible manner and businesses are able to access work in a flexible way to drive additional value in their operations. And so that's kind of Veryable's general working premise and what we help companies do. And so I came upon Veryable. Actually, my boss now, Pat, reached out to me and said he had an opportunity I might be interested in. I'd never heard of Veryable. So the first thing I did was go online. I was like, Veryable, and searched it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, this sounds like it's a really cool tool that like I could probably use today. And so I was like, sure, we'll talk. So got to talking. The more I talked to Pat, the more I realized that Veryable is doing some really cool stuff. And I wanted to be a part of the solution. As an ops manager, so often you're dealing with problems that seem like they're outside of your control, and you're just trying to react and find a solution for today to get to tomorrow. So to be able to come up, be a part of providing a resource that helps people solve problems they've been dealing with sometimes for decades is a really cool experience. So ended up coming to Veryable. And I've enjoyed it ever since. It's definitely different. We're doing something different. We're making change. That's not always easy, but it's a lot of fun.
I have a little bit of experience. Post Navy, I went to Target and worked in a distribution center, and then I did a couple other ops jobs before I got over here. You're right. Like, every Christmas we were bringing in tons of seasonal staff, and it wasn't just bringing in the seasonal staff, but hiring them was complicated and took a long time out of our day. Training them took a long time. How do you guys, specific to like the training and some of the differences that are necessary within, warehousing, for instance, or manufacturing, how do you make sure that the employees that you're helping place within those roles have the right certifications and qualifications?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the key things, and I'll just, is you mentioned like the employees you help place. So what's really cool about Veryable is we're not a staffing agency. So we're not actually placing anyone. What we've done is we've built a marketplace, and it's a marketplace for on-demand labor. So people are able to come onto the marketplace and say, hey, I'd be happy to work in a flexible way. That works great for me. And businesses are able to come on and say, hey, I need some people, but I really want to go about this a different way. Like, I want to try something different. And for us, it's really about how do we find those partners that want to be strategic in their thinking about this. And so you talk about training. And one of the things that really is neat about the way our platform works is we're helping companies build a flexible extension of their workforce. We call it your labor pool. And they have full control over their business portal, over their labor pool, over managing that. And our teams in the field, they give the businesses the coaching on how to do that to drive the most value. And so, if you have someone that comes into your operations, let's say at Target, and, they've done warehouse work before, they have a rating through our platform, they've got a reliability score, ahead of time they're probably going to be a pretty good fit. They show up and they do a good job, and you rate them 4 or 5 stars, they're automatically put in your labor pool. Now you can go from there and start to add people, manually. You can post ops specifically to your labor pool as well. So after a period of time, you get to a point where you're not just accessing the tens of thousands of operators there in any given market, any given district, but you can post things just to the group that's already been trained in your operations. So if you know that Mondays are usually really heavy for us, you can say, look, I don't want to train anyone on Mondays. Like, I know I need to keep, bringing new people in occasionally, but on Mondays, I really need to have all of my best. You can post Monday to adjust your labor pool. And maybe, Tuesdays are a little lighter. So it's like, all right, I'm going to bring in 40 people from my labor pool. I'm going to bring in 5 new people intentionally because I want to spend a little bit of time investing in finding new people, training them to keep my labor pool fresh and keep it growing. And so if you manage that right, you can, really strategically use your labor pool to drive value at the exact volume, the exact time you need it. And you have the ability to scale it down when you don't. So you're only spending on labor that you need. You don't have to spend on overtime, which, sounds great for a lot of people at first, but ends up burning people out. A little overtime is nice. A lot of overtime leads to turnover. And so you're really able to balance, your operations a lot better, manage your costs a lot better. And it's
almost the inverse as well. I remember being overstaffed frequently, with full-time employees, and you end up having to like ask for volunteers to leave was what we would do. And, there was always somebody willing to go home and not get paid for that day. But it's definitely a hard math problem in those high-speed environments,
where
demand fluctuates.
The side of the equation, John, that a lot of people don't think about. It's just like, okay, maybe I can use Veryable if I need some people. But if we're using this right and we're using this strategically, we've actually built our baseline full-time staffing to a level that I can scale Veryable down. And my full-time people have so much more predictability and stability because I don't have to ask them to not work and not get paid. I don't have to ask them to go home, or I don't have to lay them off when volume is down. I just scale down variable utilization to the level that I need so that I'm covering my demand, and then I can instantly scale up the next day or the next week as needed.
I do have one more variable question before we move on. It just has to do with sort of the financial arrangement between your customers, which are the facilities, and the contract workers. Can you talk a little bit about how Veryable handles that, sort of how the employees get paid?
Yeah, so we manage that transaction. So businesses choose what they're going to pay operators. We pay the operators the next day through our platform.
So the next day?
The next day for the work.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, and then we invoice businesses weekly for all the work that was performed. So they're not the businesses is not having to deal with, man, I got to pay people every day. They get an invoice weekly for all the work that was performed, but that operator gets next day pay.
That's great. That is phenomenal.
That is great.
I
wish.
Yeah, I kind of thinking about right now. How do I sign up for Veryable? Look around this office.
You just go to variableops.com, sign up, say you're a worker, and then you can go work ops tomorrow. So.
The last thing I need is to be rejected by variableops.com as well. No, just kidding.
Yeah, Yeah, so kind of just going off of that, what would you say are the current labor market challenges, and how do you think companies can adapt to these challenges using innovative solutions?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I'll just start with like it's not really so much like what I think the challenges are. They're pretty well documented, right? We have an aging workforce. The baby boomer generation is still a significant portion of our workforce,
Mhm.
and they're retiring at a rapid rate. We're not bringing in enough skilled labor at any level really to replace that. Now we've got made a lot of advancements in technology that help boost productivity of people, and that can help make up for some of the loss of bodies,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really address the problem, which is we've got a significant shortage looming of trained, skilled labor. And so, how do we solve that problem? Right, that's the big question. It's like, okay, we've got all of this work that needs to be done, and we want to. Everyone, is kind of in agreement. Not everyone. There's people that aren't, but I guess largely there's a lot of people in agreement that we do want to reshore a lot of manufacturing too. I think people have
Hmm.
realized there's a ton of value in making things in the United States and having that production local and shortening those supply lines so that you can get
Hmm.
faster, more responsive service. So knowing that we want to bring more manufacturing back to the U.S., knowing that we're actually kind of coming into a net deficit of people from where we're at
Yeah.
today, what we have to do is think about how do we get more people into the workforce. And so that's part of what Veryable is all about, is saying, hey, whether we like it or not, it's not really a question. It's the fact of the matter is 60% of working age population is what's participating, roughly, which means that
Hmm.
roughly 40% of all people that are of working age population are not actually participating in the labor force. And so you could, dive into all of the reasons why, but some of the biggest reasons are that people need or want more autonomy and flexibility in their lives.
Hmm.
And too many jobs don't offer that. Now you see a lot of corporate jobs trying to do things like hybrid, remote work, et cetera, to like appeal to people to make themselves more attractive. But you can't do a manufacturing job from home. Like you can't like phone it. You can't get on a Zoom call and run an injection molding machine.
Yep.
That's not possible. And so it's like, how do we bridge that gap? And so what Veryable is actually, doing with our solution is to say, hey, if we're able to kind of change the way we think about how we need to go about our operations and workforce strategy, do we actually need John for 5 or 6 days in a row? Like John's great, but do we
Yeah.
need John for 5 or 6 days in a row? Or do we need someone who has the skills and capabilities of John
Um,
for 5 and 6 days in a row? What we
and then
actually
I
need is
love.
someone who has that capabilities. I know you're great, John, but
Oh yeah, no, it's not me. It was another John. Very common name, but and I think again the power of the other side of that conversation. Megan and I were talking earlier, and again, Megan and I come from opposite ends of the
yeah,
the career. She's coming out of college. She sees this world and it's beautiful, and her world has been shaped by the last technological advances. Where I'm still the old guy.
yeah.
Um, the concept of that flexibility of what I want to work 3 days a week, and now you're giving somebody that opportunity, and if that's enough money for them to live on, that's what our world needs. Like this concept that everyone has to fit into this bucket of salaried or hourly 40 to 50 hours a week, every week. I'd love that you guys are disrupting that model.
Well, and I think what's also disruptive is right now there's a lot of people that work full time in
Hmm.
manufacturing that want more flexibility. I mean, how many
Yeah.
times do you think there's a floor worker that's like, "Hey, I've got a kid's soccer game this Thursday
Yeah.
afternoon. I'd really like to make it to," and they put in their request. They try to get someone to switch shifts, and no one puts in to switch with them. So they've got a choice to make. Either I'm going to miss work and get dinged, or I'm going to show up to work and miss my kid's game. Well, what would it do for a manufacturing operation if you had Veryable as an example, and we're able to say, hey, look, we can be flexible with our full-time people because we've built flexibility into our
Right.
strategy. So if you've got some really good full-time workers that are amazing full-time, but
Hmm.
occasionally need a little bit more flexibility in their schedule, if you've got your labor pool, you don't need to
Yeah.
say, you know what, John, it's tough. It's tough, but you're gonna
Yeah.
have to work this Thursday. You can say, hey, no problem. Go to your kid's game. We've got you covered. See you on Friday.
Traditional model is use your PTO, which
Yep.
nobody ever has enough of that. And
Right.
so, no, that's, yeah, I've already thought of like people in my network that I'm like, they're going to be hearing about you guys here before the end of the pod. Even if you guys see me looking away, I'm texting my brother-in-law.
Yeah. So, I mean, but so Veryable has a solution, right? But we're not the
Hmm.
only solution. I think
Right.
when you talk about the overall labor challenges, a lot more needs to be done. And there's a lot of really cool organizations out there that are, helping to educate people, young people, about opportunities in manufacturing. Now, I'm going to be honest, when I was coming out of high school, I was, class valedictorian 4.0. It didn't even occur to me that manufacturing is an option. That's not to say that anyone steered me in the wrong direction. It just wasn't presented as an option. And it wasn't something I ever really thought about. And so I think that we've just got to do a better job at letting young people know about what's out there. And, maybe you're not going to be a production line worker. Maybe there's a plant manager role, there's a supervisor, or there's a quality role for you. But I think so many people don't think about everything that goes into what's made. And the other day I was sitting at my kitchen table, having breakfast with the family, and my daughter was learning something in school about, this was made in a factory. And so we started to go around our house and talk about everything we were seeing and where it was made. And I mean, it was very, very hard to name anything that didn't have something in it that was made in a factory. And so I think it's such an important part of our society, and it's so often overlooked that we've just got to do a better job. And you've got organizations like Magnet, up here in Cleveland, Manufacturing Works, all the workforce organizations across Ohio. Everyone's trying to work together to solve the problem. I think that's what it takes. It takes people working together to bring different solutions to the table to say, hey, look, we've got this shortage looming. We've got to get creative about how we work together to solve this problem. No one solution is going to be the only answer.
What do you think is going to be some of the emerging trends and technologies that you believe will shape the future of manufacturing and distribution?
I think about some of the trends. I mean, I think Veryable is going to be one of those trends. Well, that's why I'm with Veryable, right? The reason I came over to Veryable is because I think that Veryable is doing something that's disruptive and that's necessary. So I think that's going to absolutely shape manufacturing and distribution. If you're an operations leader that's running, operations at a manufacturer today, or a distributor today, or you're running a warehouse, so often we have these leaders in these positions and we ask them to do a lot. And we don't always arm them with the tools to do the best job. And that's I don't think that's intentional. I think that's just, we get used to and we get comfortable doing things the way they've been done. And when you have to do something new and different, sometimes people jump at that and say, hey, look, I want to go do something new and different because I think it's cool. I want to try it. I want to make something better. But it's also a little bit scary. And so that's why I joined Veryable, though, is because I think it's necessary. I think it's going to shape the future. I think it's going to give manufacturers an opportunity to drive organic growth. Because what's really cool is so often when you're looking at how do we fuel growth in our organization, it's big investments, capital intensive investments. Yeah. And if you guess wrong on a capital intensive investment, you could go out of business. What's really cool about Veryable is it's not a huge investment. It's really not an investment at all. You pay for work that you get done and you only pay for it when you need it. So if you're going after additional business and you already have the equipment capabilities, you're able to say, hey, look, I'm going to go after this business. And if I land it, I'm going to be able to scale instantly to deliver. And then, by the way, now I'm going to hire more full-time people because this is a 5-year contract. So, Veryable is not the permanent solution there, but it can be a part of the solution to let you go get that business without having to, all right, I need to pre-hire 100 people because if I land this, I have to deliver in a month. And I'm just going to gamble and hope that I land it. No, land it, deliver, start to build that pipeline. Keep Veryable as a portion of your workforce strategy. So if that goes away, you're not, you have to fire people and lay them off. So I think that's one of them. I think other trends, we can see a little bit of it kind of on the horizon now. There's a lot of noise about AI. And there's a lot of really useful applications for it. I don't think we fully figured out what those are. In fact, I know I haven't figured out fully what those are. But as you think about those applications, a lot of people think about, it's going to take people's jobs. So I think it's really going to help make people more productive. And so that's going to shape the future of manufacturing and distribution. If you can have one guy who's designing your whatever it is, your widget, and he can be aided by AI, you can be so much more productive as an organization than if you have to have 6 people doing that job. And that's not to say that those 6 people won't have jobs. They're going to have jobs doing something else. But that business is going to be able to take the resources they have and make more of it to make the most of that and drive the most value for their business, for their people, and for society as a whole. So I think, the advances in technology with AI are going to be important. I don't know exactly where that's going to land or what it's going to look like, but I think it is going to be important. And I do think tools like Veryable, and Veryable specifically, are going to be a big part of how we're able to fuel growth faster and businesses' profitability better to better support their people and their communities.
I mean, I can see a use case for a variable, kind of called a variable contractor, one of the folks using your platform that has a skill set in, robotics, in how to, make manufacturing of robots, be more productive. And, that skill set can be marketed across multiple companies.
Yeah, we have a business using our platform right now that makes robotics equipment. So they're a company that's focused on making automation equipment.
Yeah.
But we're working with them because we're both trying to accomplish the same thing, which is to help make
Hmm.
businesses more productive, more effective.
Yeah.
With Variable, they're able to make sure that they're meeting their scheduled deadlines. If they've got something that comes off track,
Hmm.
maybe supply is late, maybe they had a delay in development, they can ramp up with Variable to make sure that still gets out on time. So they're able to
Yeah.
deliver better service for their customers, deliver that equipment to the end user on time because
Yeah.
they have Variable. We're both helping solve the same problem, which is how do we help people more productive, more efficient.
And I love that, we work for a software development company, and we build tools. And the key is, the message is, like, we need people to be more productive, not less and fired. And
Yeah.
that's a hard thing for some people that don't really want to lean into AI to swallow. So what kind of, like, when you're talking to folks, kind of your customer base and the people you work with, about sort of these changes that are inevitable, to the world that you and I know today with generative AI and the concepts of, artificial general intelligence, like, how do you bridge those gaps, especially with some of those older workforce members who just are skeptical and think it's, folks like John Sarver's dream to fire everybody and just build robots to run the world, which
I
is kind
mean,
of a dream.
yeah, I mean, so anytime you have any sort of technological change, you're pretty familiar. And I don't
Mhm.
know. I remember learning about it, like the detailed
Yeah.
buckets of where people fall. Right, you have your early adopters, you have your kind of
Hmm.
mainstream people, you have your late adopters. Well, there are going to be some people who are late adopter, right? Like that's just the fact of the
Yeah.
matter. Is not everyone is going to be a fit. You're gonna have some people who are your early adopters, and I think the key is to make sure that we're saying the right message to the early adopters so that we're helping them understand the
Hmm.
value it brings, so that we're getting the right stories, driving the right value. That's going to be what helps propel the mainstream people to see the value and want to do
Yep.
it. And so it is a little bit on the people that are doing it now to execute properly so that we can actually get the results we're looking for, drive the
Okay.
results we're looking for, instead of, oh, John's trying to take people's jobs with software. It's like, no,
Yep.
John has made this company 300% more productive with software.
Right.
And because of that, we've actually added 50 jobs.
Are
And the mainstream people see that. And it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we were able to fuel our growth because we operated more efficiently. And that actually created more rather than took away. That's
Yeah.
where I think you got to get to.
I think about the industries that Variable's in, and it doesn't seem like it's full of early adopters to me. Like, the folks that I worked with all seem to be a little risk averse, and the tech was always a little bit older, and they just kind of did. Are you finding that it's hard to find those early adopters for you guys, or is it pretty? There are people out there that are maybe a younger generation that are leaning into it more so than the old folks.
Well, I think it's really just comes down to there are always early adopters in any industry. And so, yeah, there
Hmm.
are businesses and people that I've talked to that aren't a fit right now for what Variable is doing. We
Hmm.
recognize that; they recognize that.
Yeah.
There are some though that are, and it's not always younger people. There's one of our best users up in the Cleveland market is an older guy. He's owned the company for a long time. He
Hmm.
sees the trends, and he's really kind of dived into using Variable to support his operations. And it's just really cool to see. It's not always younger people.
Hmm.
I've got when I think about like the people that I work with on any given day, it covers the spectrum of ages. You have
Yeah.
people that are new in their career and excited about like the change
Hmm.
and like this is awesome, and you have people who are upper 60s business owners
Hmm.
that are like, I don't know if I love the fact that this is where we're at, but I get why this is necessary.
Well,
And
yeah.
both of those are good users. So
A couple of the folks that I know that run their own businesses, staffing is always a challenge, and I think this is a great solution for those folks that are trying to manage that balance of cash flow out the door on full time employees and making sure they are staffed with trained personnel. So I feel like you guys have a really positive solution for the market.
yeah, and
So
again, it's not for us. It's not about staffing, but it's about
right.
how do we strategically position ourselves so that we can staff appropriately, and we don't
Hmm.
really get involved in that. But if we're able to position Variable the right way in the operations, then that business knows, hey, I only need to staff to this level, and I can actually
Hmm.
retain these people better because I can invest in them, I can train them, I can
Yeah.
give them the flexibility they need,
Um,
and I can give them the kind of confidence knowing that they're good because
yeah.
any variability in my operations is going to be covered with Variable. And we've got a really good labor pool of return operators, of people that are coming back all the time who I know by
Um,
name that I can count on, that are doing the rest of the work. And so when
when,
you build that up, you've really got your full time. Think of it like your 18, your starters, and then you've got your bench who are just as good, but you don't put them in all the time. So
looking at that labor pool, I have one more question on it, and it's fascinating to me. So I'll be respectful and not ask a million questions, but this one is interesting. So those A players, about how many different companies will they work with, or are they pretty much are you finding it almost like a one-to-one relationship from the labor perspective, or are they going out and finding 2, maybe 3 manufacturers so they can kind of have options and fill their schedule more?
Yeah, I don't
Like,
know if
how
you
are you
already
seeing
met with someone else from Veryable, but that's the number,
No,
2 to 3. So 2 to
no.
3 is typically the
Okay.
number that operators find, sometimes 4, but they, yes, they have flexibility of going to a bunch of different businesses. But operators do kind of find the ones that are a really good fit for them, a good match for
Mm-hmm.
their skill set. They like the people, they like the culture. And they know, I think, that not every day are they going to necessarily get selected at that business, because
Yep.
that business may not post for the same volume every day. So it's good to have a
Right.
few businesses in your rotation that you like going to, and you can bid on their opportunities. And if you do a good job and you're in all of their labor pools, you really do kind of get pick of the litter on when you go work, where you go work. Because if you're a 5-star operator who's done 300 ops and is 100% reliable, even if you're
Yep.
not in the labor pool for someone, if you see a new opportunity that looks interesting, you put your name in the hat, you're probably going to get selected.
That's awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end. We like to end with the same question, just to kind of get like kind of a view from your perspective, and which is, put on your futurist hat.
Okay.
Let's think 15 years down the road.
Yeah.
Give me a prediction. It doesn't have to be in the market you work today, but like, what would be a tech prediction that you think is going to happen in the next 15 years, when you and I are going to be sipping bourbon on a beach somewhere together?
So a tech prediction for 15 years from
Yeah.
now. I think if we think so, I can't help but think about in manufacturing.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to see some integrated use of AI and probably robotics together to help manufacturing be more productive. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and I kind of said it earlier, but I think that we're still just figuring out what exactly AI is capable of and how we can best use that. So I think in 15 years, we might have nailed down a couple of use cases that are going to help manufacturers be more productive. And I think if we combine that with some of the advances we're making in robotics, I think there's a really good kind of marriage there for driving, some of these operations that are, super repetitive, super high volume, an AI robotics combination that can do a better job. I think we're going to see that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Austin. This was an amazing conversation. Go Army, go Navy. Thank you for your service. And that brings us to the end of our episode. So for everyone out there listening and watching, if you have anything you want to add or questions you want to ask, feel free to reach out to us at technicallyspeakingexpeed@gmail.com, or leave a comment here wherever you're viewing our podcast from. Austin, again, thank you for your time today. To our viewers, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next one. See you guys.
Great talking to you.